Sorry, you look adorable, but you look like trouble. So
I'm thank you.
Intrigued and scared all at once. Come here, what is your name? I think you're adorable. I think you might be bad news, but I do think you're adorable. So.
What are you doing?
What am I doing?
Alone?
Yeah, my friends are down in Shoko, but I just wanted to come up and grab a breath of air for a second because it's kind of like, a lot of people and whatnot.
Okay.
And then I found this, cute Austrian girl, and one thing led to another, and then, So today, me and my whiteboard have two very bold claims. Claim number one is that I can teach you and show you how to have a good response to every single thing a girl is going to throw at you for the first minute of the conversation. Claim number two is that's actually not the most important thing I'm going to teach you on this video. And we'll get to that in just a second. Now you're going to ask yourself, how could I possibly teach you everything that you're going to run into in the first 60 seconds? Isn't that an infinite number of possibilities? Well, yes, it is. There literally are an infinite number of things that the girl could say to you if you look at every single word and every single response is different. However, all of those responses fit into a few categories. So if you understand the categories of responses and you know the categories of responses you need to give back to those, then you're going to be in a really good spot. And whenever I talk about verbal game and my game and how it works, this is a really key element. This idea that that you're not just looking at words, you're looking at formats, all right? And if you're responding with the right format, even if the words are a little off, you're going to be fine. And if you're understanding the format the girl's giving you, the exact words don't always matter entirely, all right? So you want to really break down the reasons and formats for what's going on. And if you get that, you're going to be way more flexible and way more effective in your game. All right, so with that said, let's get to the first minute and let's look at the possibilities for what can happen. Now in this scenario, I'm going to assume a direct open. Now you may say, well, I don't open direct, Todd. Is this still useful to me? Yes, it is, because basically the direct open is just a proxy for the first time that you make the interaction man-to-woman. So it's possible, if you're doing a direct open, you're making it man-to-woman on the open. It's also possible if you open indirect or casual or situational that you bring up something man-to-woman later, in which case this model would start from that first man-to-woman statement. All right, so let's look at that from here. So you make your, we'll call it the direct opener. You have a direct open. And now again, there is an infinite number of responses you can get, but these responses fall into formats. So what are the possibilities for the formats you might get? And again, I'm going to assume in this case just a complementary direct open because that's the easiest to work with. The same format would apply to any kind of direct open, but it's just easier to envision like with a complement, okay? So in response to that, what could you get? You could get something positive back. You could get a shit test. You could get something that is logical or platonic. Or you could get a rejection. That's basically going to encapsulate all of the different responses that you're likely to get to this direct open. And by basically putting them in those four categories, if you can just respond consistently to those categories, you're going to be in really good shape. So let's start looking at how to respond to each of those. All right, so the first one, if you get something positive. All right, so you did a direct open, you gave a compliment, she compliments you back. So you're like, hey, you're cute, I want to meet you. She's like, oh, you're cute too. Okay, what do you want to do from there? Well, you now have a green light to take the interaction forward. And this is the ideal scenario, right? You like her, she likes you. And then what you're going to want to do is actually, you've achieved premise. Now you want to move to the next phase of the interaction, which would be evaluation. You want to get to, okay, we both find each other attractive. What do we do now? Are we right for each other? So again, you say, you're cute, I want to meet you. She goes, you're cute too. Say, okay, cool. So now that we know we're two cute people, I need to find out, are you crazy? Are we going to get along, etc. Right? So you start into something that is qualifying. So the answer for you is qualify. So when you get that positive, you're going to want to go ahead and qualify, and you're going to want to move into that evaluation stage. All right. What about when you get a shit test? What do you want to do? Well, very simply, you want to pass the shit test, right? I'm not going to get into exactly how to pass the shit test here, but I have done a lot of videos on how to pass shit tests. You can do a search on my channel. I'll also put some in the description of exactly how to handle shit tests, how to pass them. And this is quite an interesting kind of segue here in terms of looking at verbal game, because there are two elements. One is knowing the right thing to insert. The second is having the practical skill set or technique to insert that thing. But if you have those two things, that's really all game is. Game is knowing what is the type of communication I need here, and then having practiced that communication so it becomes second nature. If you can do those two things, you have game, all right? So first is knowing that you need to pass the shit test. Second is knowing how to pass the shit test. And again, I've addressed that in a lot of other videos in depth, so I'm not gonna go into that here, but I will link to those videos, and you can find those videos on my channel very, very easily. What if you get something logical? Well, in that case, you've done the direct open, you've tried to make it man to woman, and what you got back was that she's not really necessarily acknowledging or responding to that man to woman. Now, it's still good that you made it man to woman. The interaction will still be better and still be more man to woman than if you hadn't, right? And if you put premise into the interaction, it's not rejected, it has been a positive for the interaction. However, she hasn't necessarily fully accepted that or fully gone along that path, whether because maybe she's not open to it yet, or maybe she's too shy, or maybe you were too subtle and she missed it. There are different reasons, but what you're gonna wanna do here is do something else that's premisey. You're gonna do premise again. And the thing here that's interesting is you might not want to do it right away because now you are pushy and now you're just a horny guy. So you possibly want to have with delay. And what you're really doing here, so this is the thing you're doing is premise again with delay, but what you're really doing is this, you're doing instigating. You're basically initiating a emotionally charged interaction. You're saying basically, I'm not going to be in boring logical platonic interaction. I'm going to be in an instigated interaction, in an interaction where I've made it clear that there's a man to woman nature to it. And if you've made that clear, she can reject the interaction entirely, but she can't participate in the interaction and still not be man to woman if you've done that enough times. So what you're going to do is you're basically going to reinstigate one more time. If you get a rejection, a couple of things you can do. One is you can just walk away, right? If you in-game, every single time you got a rejection on the open, just walked away, you would still be just fine. You don't need to turn around those rejections. Most of your results are gonna come from taking your good sets and making them great, rather than just taking, your bad interactions and turning them into mediocre interactions. Okay, so if you were to walk away from every rejection, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And if you're a beginner or intermediate, I think that's actually kind of fine. As you get to be more advanced, I don't want you to take the first rejection because she doesn't really know you yet. So at that point, I'd want you to say something lighthearted and have one more try where she can actually get to know your personality. Or the other thing you can do is, I call it doubling down on entitlement. So maybe if you say, hey, what's up? And the girl's like, no, I'm not having it. You're like, hi, excuse me. I'm Todd, nice to meet you. And what you've basically said is, yes, I understand that's your reaction to guys, but I'm a little bit special. You may not have noticed. I'm gonna give you one more chance to realize it. And strangely enough, about 70% of the time, that actually will work and will turn around a rejection. So it's worth having that second try, and you can potentially turn it around. But if you were to just quit, then, especially to beginner intermediate level, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's not gonna really hurt your overall results that much. So it's either quit or turn around. Okay, so those are the possibilities of what she can do and what you can do, sort of one layer deep. But here, it should get really complicated, right? Because on the first one, we had 4 different possibilities. Now, if we look in the next one, we have 16 different possibilities. Next layer of conversation, we have 64. So how is it possible that you can continue to have a response to all these? Well, let's go a little deeper and let's look at the follow through, and you're gonna see something very, very interesting. All right, so let's say that you've done this qualification thing here. What are the responses she can give to you going ahead and qualifying her? Well, she can either qualify, she can qualify herself, she can not qualify. And here I'm not saying she's trying to disqualify, I'm saying she can't qualify, or she tries to qualify and fails or something like that. And then she can do sort of, you call it disqualify, or you could even call it refuse to qualify. Disqualify, refuse to qualify, right? So here are the responses. If she qualifies herself to you, or at least attempts to, that's golden. That's amazing, and you basically have achieved a man-to-woman interaction. You're ready to go into getting to know the girl, connecting with the girl, and you've achieved everything that you really need to have achieved within the first 60 seconds of the interaction, right? You've achieved everything that you could ask for. The girl is hooked, she likes you, you're ready to move on, and that would be another video, which would be, how to deal with the girl likes you and convert that into an actual result. But in those cases, you're already golden. This is what we're looking for. This is the target. if you get a girl refusing to qualify or not qualifying, generally, you can sort of treat that as a shit test, right? For the most part, that is her kind of getting into a frame battle with you, challenging your frame, which is very similar to a shit test. And for the most part, you're going to deal with it in the same way that you would deal with a shit test. So it's not a unique response. It's not a different response in terms of what you need to follow it on with. It's going to merge into what we're going to do to deal with shit tests. So let's get into that next. How are you going to deal with a shit test? Well, you're going to pass the shit test. Again, as far as the shit test passing formats, there are a bunch. There's misinterpreting it. There's treating it like it's a compliment. That's what misinterpretation is. There's agree and exaggerate, kind of pointing at the absurdity of the shit test. There's just not being affected and changing the subject. There's different things you can do, but the result of that is going to be either you passed and she's going to give you a positive, which brings you back here, or she's going to qualify or not qualify in response to the shit test, which brings you to over here, or she's going to give you another shit test, which brings you right back here. She's going to give you something logical, which means now you are here. So all of the responses to a shit test, again, we've gone back to another one of the modules we've already seen. So no matter what you're getting, you're back to a familiar scenario, and if you know how to handle that familiar scenario, you're gonna, again, be okay. It is possible that you get a rejection off the shit test. Usually if that happens, though, it's because you did a bad job with the previous step. All right, so if you do a good job with the previous step, you usually will not get that. It is possible, anything's possible. It is unlikely if you do a good job, though. So while that is a possibility, it's one of the less likely ones. Okay, then let's say you do this logical thing, and then, she gives you a logical response, and then you re-instigate. Well, interestingly enough, this instigating thing, or premise again, technically is right back where we started, because we started this whole model with the first time that you're making it man to woman, the first time you're showing premise, and now you're just repeating that again. And so the responses you're going to get are going to be positive response, shit test, logical, or rejection, right back where you were. And again, with the rejection, what can you get? If you do turn around a rejection, sometimes you get a positive. Most of the time when you turn around a rejection, you're going to get a shit test. And so we're right back to where we were in the first place, right back to a module that we know how to handle. So funny enough, even though there's literally an infinite number of things the girl can say to you, right? And there's an exponentially increasing number of responses that you can get when you look at each response has multiple follow-up responses. Because they essentially become the same response, they become the same format over and over again, you really only need to get good at those formats. And this is the beauty of this modular verbal game, is that you're getting this predictable set of responses. And if you know how to handle these, if you know the patterns to handle, you know the patterns to deal with a logical response, patterns to deal with shit tests, patterns to deal with a positive response, and how to move things forward. If you're familiar with those things and know how to execute them, you've practiced those formats, game is actually quite simple, right? It's not necessarily easy. There's still emotional components. There's still a lot of back and forth, etc. But it is very, very simple. It's not difficult to know the next thing to do. And the more you practice it, the better you are going to get in a very repeatable, very measurable, and very predictable kind of a growth way. And that is the beauty of this sort of modular verbal game. And so again, one, you now have an idea of what to do in response to all these things. I know there's a lot of information. You always go back and rewind and check out a particular thing if you want to check it out. And I would actually encourage that. I encourage you, when you do go out in field and you have an interaction that doesn't go as planned, especially early on in the first 30, 60 seconds, come back and check this out and say, you know what? Where was I at? Where did I go wrong? What format did I need? And then just vow to not make that same mistake ever again. All right? Practice it a few times. You're going to get better and better and better with it. All right, so number one, you now have a way to handle just about anything you're going to get in the first 60 seconds. But more importantly, I want you to take this view of game in general, and especially the verbal game, that it's not just the words, it's the understanding and category behind the words that matters. And if you can put her response into categories and know how to handle those categories, you're going to be much better off. Right? When I'm thinking about what I need in game, I'm thinking I need an emotional spike. I'm not thinking I need to say you and I wouldn't get along. Because there are like 20 or 30 or 40 or 100 different emotional spikes that I know, I can pick almost any one of them and it will probably work. Right now, there may be a slightly better and a slightly worse one, but if you're getting the formats generally right, you're not going to go far wrong. You're going to be effective and consistent at getting really good results in your interactions. Okay, so I really want to hammer home this idea of verbal game, and it's not just for the first 60 seconds. There are these repeating formats that are going to occur over and over again in game. There's same repeating formats that will occur when you're evaluating a girl and finding out if you're going to get along with her. Same repeating formats that will occur when you're trying to get a girl on a date. Same repeating formats that will occur when you're trying to get a girl home. Same repeating formats that will occur when you're trying to negotiate the relationship and have things, in a way that's going to make you happy, be on your terms, and hopefully be win-win for both you and the girl. So these formats, this idea of modular verbal game is so powerful because it allows you to really have an answer for everything that's good, that's congruent with your personality, and that you can rely on and trust and have confidence in. So I really want to encourage you to take that focus, even beyond just obviously having the power to know what you're doing in the first 60 seconds being very, very valuable. All right, so if you like this video, go ahead and leave a like, definitely comment below. The other thing I want to really encourage you to do is go over and check out verbalgameacademy.com. I actually have an example of me using this exact format and then continuing that modular verbal game and the structures that I use all the way through the interaction with a live recorded example with real girls. Taking it all the way from the start to the finish. I don't know how long that video is going to be up, but it's going to be a highly useful and highly valuable video for you to check out. So go check it out right now. It's at verbalgameacademy.com. See you on the next video.